Hi, I'm Pete and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. A few weeks ago I made a video about our solar electricity setup, and I made a comment that sometimes the decisions I make don't follow financial criteria, and that's a good example. That system had a payback of more than 25 years, and some people said, well, you'd be better off investing it in the stock market. I do a lot of things in life that pay back in other ways than dollars and cents, and at the same time I'm financially successful because of those decisions I've made. I know that seems like a contradiction, but it's true. I believe if we base our decision making solely on what's economically best, the world is a pretty great place. Heck, my world would be a lot grayer if I had done that. I wouldn't be living in my ancestral home. I probably wouldn't have all these old tractors around to keep me company. And I'd probably be still working a job that I hated instead of living on a farm that I love. When I was growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money, and there were a lot of things I wanted that we just couldn't afford. When I got out of architectural school and started my first job, I still didn't have very much money. In fact, I couldn't make ends meet, and I accumulated credit card debt and lived in a cheap apartment in Syracuse. But somehow, in my mid-20s, I had the wherewithal to see that accumulating stuff wasn't the key to happiness. And when I met Hillary, my wife, she felt the same way. At this time, I was listening to people like David Ramsey and Clark Howard on the radio who were advocating a debt-free existence as the key to freedom in life, and I believed them. As I advanced in my job, I started to make some more money, and instead of using that money to go out and buy stuff, I used it to pay off the debts I had accumulated. I paid off my student loans in 5 years, which was half of the original payback period. I made double and triple payments to do that. I paid off the credit card debt I had accumulated when I first started working, and I've never carried a credit card balance since then. And when Hillary and I moved from Syracuse back to the farm to fix up the old house in 1996, we bought an old house trailer with the wedding money that we had received, and we lived in that while we fixed up the house rent-free. That way we could take the money that we would have been paying in rent and put that cash toward buying materials to fix up the old house. I did have to take out a small mortgage in the end of the construction, but we paid it off in about 7 years. As I further advanced in my career, our expenses remained very low, and we socked away a lot of money between 2000 and 2013 when I left my job. All this took us 20 years. It was a slow gratification, and it runs counter to what marketing and advertising tells us is the American version of success, which is to run out and buy more stuff to make yourself happy. But the problem is, what happens is when you buy that thing that you think will make you happy, you just want the next thing because the gratification is short-lived. And if you don't have the money to buy the thing, you can go out and borrow the money to buy the thing, so you're not putting the investment into the thing you want to make it very valuable to you after you have it. This keeps us on the consumerism treadmill. We want more stuff, so we borrow more money to buy that stuff. Then we have to run faster on the treadmill to pay the loan interest of having all that stuff, and we wind up locked into a job that maybe we don't like because we're up to our ears in debt and we have no other choice. And I think many people are unhappy their whole life because they're trapped. Hillary and I did the opposite of getting on the treadmill. Heck, we never even got on the treadmill, let alone getting off of it. And we never accumulated any long-lasting debt. We worked hard for what we wanted, but we waited to get it until we had the money to afford it. And we avoided all the debt, and we avoided all the interest that gets paid as a result of that debt. Here is my view of creating a deeply rewarding life. If you work slowly toward the things that you want to accomplish, and you do that work yourself, the results will be lastingly rewarding. You'll look back with pride years after you've accomplished them and say, I made that and I'm proud of it. And you'll care for those things a lot more than something you just went out and bought because you put a piece of yourself into it. The things that we work hard for over a long period of time have lasting gratification. And here's the example of my house. 20 years after renovating our house, I still look up at the ceiling in our bedroom before I go to sleep at night and I say, there was open sky there before I fixed that. And now that roof keeps us dry and safe. If somebody else had done that work, if somebody else had built our house, I wouldn't look twice at it. People thought that it didn't make sense to renovate our old house. They said push it down and build a new one behind it. In a sense, it was twice the work to renovate this house as building a new house, because I had to take it apart piece by piece and then build a new house in its place. Most people would have gone out and hired somebody to just build a new house, but I took 3 years to renovate this house. And the reason I did it is because it meant so much. 5 generations of my family lived in this house. And in the end, it came to mean more than I ever could have thought that it would, because while I was renovating it, I learned everything that it takes to build a house. Rough carpentry, finish carpentry, plumbing, electrical, the list goes on and on. I grew so much as a person while I was making our home. And in the end, I wound up with a home that is filled with my family's history, and that I will care for much more than just a place that I went out and bought and moved my family into. I'll never move from this place. I also saved a lot of money by doing the work myself, and this made the project economically practical as well as meaningful. If I'd hired a contractor to do this work, it probably would have cost me twice as much, and I would have never been able to afford it. In addition, doing the work slowly and learning as I went spaced the cash outlays out so we could pay for it with money we had in our pocket, and we didn't have to accumulate and pay interest from a mortgage. The most rewarding things take an incredible perseverance to the point of being irrationally stubborn about finishing them yourselves. And usually those are the things that people will tell you aren't worthwhile. The more work I put into something, the more I tend to be proud of it, take care of it, and value it. A good example is this F20 tractor. Was it worthwhile to turn a pile of junk into a like-new tractor? From a financial perspective, no. I spent more on parts than this tractor's worth. But was it worthwhile from other perspectives? Yes. Preserving history is worthwhile. It has meaning. I learned so much going through this tractor, learning how everything worked. It's worthwhile in a lot more ways than just dollars and cents. Starting our farm was not a snap decision. It was the culmination of 20 years of frugality. After 20 years of saving and saving, Hillary and I finally had enough money to do what we wanted with the rest of our lives. I was 42, she was 39, and I knew in my 20s that I wanted the freedom that being debt-free would afford me, but I didn't know what to do with it. I knew one thing, and that was that I needed to leave my old job. I had been miserable for years there, and if I were purely thinking of the world in economic terms, I'd still be there, and I'd still be miserable. And I think of all the people that are trapped in their job and stay miserable, and all of the hatred and ill feelings that must accumulate from being unhappy with your life for so long, and how people lash out at the world because it's not what they want and they feel like they have no choice. I had a choice, so I left. Pretty soon after leaving my job, I knew that farming was what the rest of my life was going to be. I'd grown up on a farm and I had great memories of it. We started our farm following the same ethic we'd had all our lives, which was frugality. We didn't go out and buy a bunch of shiny new equipment, and we didn't hire other people to do the work for us. This meant that, just like when I was renovating the house, we started slow and bootstrapped our growth with the cash that we earned from the farm. The added benefit was that I could learn along the way. Instead of buying everything, all of our livestock and equipment up front and risking making a bad decision, we started small, and as I learned, we grew. An example is our 35 head herd of Dexter cattle. Now, I could have gone out on day one of our farm and purchased 35 head, and I probably would have had to borrow money to do so, but instead, we started out with 3 head, and we built up our herd gradually. That way we got to know the breed, get comfortable that it was the breed that we wanted, and now in the end, I have a herd that I am very familiar with because we built it from the ground up, and it's a lot more valuable to me than if I had just gone out and dropped a bunch of money on 35 head of cattle. Being frugal and self-sufficient go hand in hand, and that's at the core of how we farm. If you're frugal, a result of being frugal is depending on yourself for more. Someone may look at our farm and say, well, you should run 100 head on your land and buy in your hay, or you should buy new equipment and that way you don't have to worry about breakdowns. But my success in life has come from valuing self-sufficiency. The things that I've done and learned and built are what made me who I am. And so it's natural for me when I go out to buy a piece of equipment to buy one that I can fix and that I don't have to send back to the dealer to fix. And when I'm thinking about how to provide forage for my cattle, it's natural for me to say, I'm going to grow that myself. I don't want to depend on somebody else to do it for me. Sometimes my valuing self-sufficiency will run counter to what makes best sense economically, and that's okay. The satisfaction of growing my own beef with my own hands and my own land is hard to measure in dollars and cents, but it's worthwhile. So sometimes the things I do on our farm make strict financial sense, and sometimes they're more about bringing meaning or the things that are important to me to the way we farm. And the things that are best are where those two things cross, profitability and meaning and purpose. It's important to keep our eyes open about what we're doing here as far as the dollars and cents, yes. And I have a whole series of videos about tracking farm profitability where we do just that. There is a hard underpinning to what we're doing, but we're also about that higher meaning that's always been a part of my life. The important thing is that we're purposeful about what we're doing here, and you should be too. You can't just think of things in the financial realm and say that's all that life is, because what I'm trying to say here is there's so much more to it. It is equally important to do things for how they impact the larger world and how they affect your own well-being and the richness of experience that they add to your life, rather than just being pigeonholed into profit or loss, dollars or cents. Hillary and I have set up this place to be a reflection of what we think is right in the world. And all you have to do to find out how many people are unhappy in this world is to open up your Facebook feed or read the news. It's filled with enraged people yelling at each other. I don't even look at the news anymore. I can't take it. And I really wish that people would spend less time having problems with what other people are doing or what other people believe in, and would spend more time getting in touch with themselves and understanding that in order to be happy you need to do what you love, and sometimes that will run contrary to some financial considerations, and you need to work that out for yourself. It's really important to be happy in this life. You only get one of them. And remember that the most rewarding and meaningful things you can accomplish in your lifetime take patience and perseverance and hard work over years and even decades. And at the same time, you have to learn to switch off the roar from advertising and marketing and even other people telling you that you should live your life in a certain way, the buy now and pay later way. In the immortal words of George Carlin, the American dream, you have to be asleep to believe it. You do have to be asleep to believe it. If the American dream is based on buying more and more stuff, I'd rather sleep through it. We have to make our own American dream. I hope this video was informative. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time, and have a good day.